February 2010. The world's most provocative fashion house loses its founder overnight. Alexander McQueen was not just a man, he was the energy and the soul behind every shock, every story, every runway spectacle that crashed live streams and set the industry on edge. Officially, the brand survived. Yet behind the scenes, designers scrambled to finish his last collection, while investors and fans wondered, what happens when a label loses the mind that defined it? The answer is far stranger and more revealing than most realize. This is where the real story of what became of McQueen begins. Alexander McQueen built his name on spectacle, a kind of authorship that left no room for compromise. Every season, the runway became a stage for confrontation and fantasy, each show a complete world with its own language of shock and beauty. In October 2009, the house reached its theatrical peak with Plato's Atlantis. That collection, live-streamed for the first time in fashion history, drew so many viewers that servers crashed moments after Lady Gaga tweeted a link. Models stalked the runway in alien-like armadillo heels, their bodies transformed by digital prints that blurred the line between human and sea creature. Robotic cameras swept the stage, scanning the audience as if searching for signs of life in a world undone by rising oceans. This was not just fashion. It was prophecy, autobiography, and technical experiment fused into one. McQueen's vision was always personal, trauma and myth rendered in cloth and skin. Earlier collections had already set the tone, the torn tartan and exposed flesh of Highland Rape in 1995, the haunting glass box of VOSS in 2001, the prosthetic legs worn by Amy Mullins in 1999. Each show pushed the audience to the edge of discomfort, then drew them back with the precision of Savile Row tailoring and the seduction of pure craft. Plato's Atlantis took these tensions further. The narrative was apocalyptic. Humanity facing climate catastrophe returns to the sea. Models moved as if caught between evolution and extinction, their dresses rippling with scales, their hair twisted into sculptural braids. Technology was everywhere. 3D printed shoes, digital fabric manipulations, a live broadcast that turned a Paris arena into a global event. The spectacle was total, but so was the intimacy. Every detail, from the music to the embroidery, bore McQueen's hand. By the end of the show, it was clear that the brand's identity was inseparable from its founder. The house codes, shock paired with beauty, vulnerability with aggression, fantasy grounded in technical mastery, were not just signatures. They were extensions of a single mind. In that moment, Alexander McQueen was not simply a label. It was the living expression of one person's imagination at its most intense and unfiltered. On February 11, 2010, Lee Alexander McQueen was found dead in his London home. The news broke just days after the funeral of his mother, Joyce. In a matter of hours, the house that had been built around a single mind was left without its core. The shock ran through every level of the organization: designers, pattern cutters, embroiderers, and executives, none of whom had ever operated without McQueen's daily presence. There was no script for what came next. The Fall-Winter 2010 collection, later known as Angels and Demons, was in progress, with McQueen having completed 16 looks himself. The atelier gathered in silence, surrounded by unfinished sketches and pinned fabrics. The mandate was not to innovate, but to finish. Each member of the studio became a caretaker of the founder's intent, translating his notes and fabric choices into completed garments. As one team member recalled in a contemporary interview, Lee had everything mapped out: fabrics, sketches, even the music. Our job was execution, not reinvention. The collection was presented in Paris on March 9, less than a month after McQueen's death. Models walked in illuminated halos, armadillo-like footwear, and tailored silhouettes that echoed the Gothic and religious themes McQueen had chosen. The show was not a spectacle of new beginnings. It was a collective act of tribute and survival. The audience responded with a standing ovation, but beneath the applause was a sense of finality. The brand's future was no longer about creative ascent. The question became whether a house so closely tied to one imagination could function at all without him. In the weeks that followed, the organization's priority was simple: keep the doors open, fulfill orders, and honor commitments. The creative engine was gone, but the machinery of the brand could not stop. For the first time, Alexander McQueen became an entity in crisis, defined not by what it could create, but by whether it could continue. Sarah Burton stepped into the role of creative director in May 2010, just weeks after the loss that had left the House of McQueen in limbo. Burton was not an outsider. She had joined the studio as an intern in 1996, rising quietly through the ranks to become head of design. For over a decade, she worked side by side with McQueen, translating his sketches into garments and learning the codes that defined the brand. Her appointment was less a disruption than a continuation, a decision that signaled the house's commitment to survival through fidelity, not reinvention. The early challenge was clear: maintain the integrity of McQueen's vision while finding a way forward in a world that no longer included him. Burton's first collections did not chase spectacle. Instead, she focused on refinement, retaining the brand's technical rigor and gothic romance, but softening the more confrontational edges. Tailoring remained sharp, embroidery intricate, but silhouettes became more fluid and the narrative less punishing. The emotional charge of McQueen's runways gave way to a quieter kind of drama, rooted in craftsmanship and restraint. Burton's approach found its most visible expression in 2011, when she was commissioned to design the wedding dress for Catherine Middleton. The project unfolded in secrecy, under the scrutiny of both the royal family and the global press. The dress was a study in balance. Traditional lacework and hand-finished details combined with a modern silhouette that nodded to McQueen's legacy of structure and invention. When the world watched Catherine Middleton walk down the aisle, the House of McQueen was no longer an emblem of shock. It was a symbol of legitimacy, craftsmanship, and cultural relevance on the global stage. This moment did not abandon the founders' codes, but it translated them into a new language. Under Burton, McQueen became more wearable, more accessible, and ultimately more stable. The trade-off was clear. The brand's edge softened, and its conversation with the avant-garde quieted. Yet the business found its footing, and the house was no longer at risk of vanishing. Instead, it became a fixture, a name synonymous not only with innovation, but with continuity and craft. In 2011, the Metropolitan Museum of Art hosted an exhibition that became a phenomenon: Savage Beauty. Curated by Andrew Bolton, the show gathered McQueen's most radical pieces: torn tartans, glass boxes, prosthetic legs, and the infamous armadillo heels, displayed not as fashion, but as relics. Over 650,000 visitors filed through the galleries, making it the Met's most attended fashion exhibition to date. Lines stretched around the block, drawing crowds from industry insiders to tourists and teenagers, all eager to witness McQueen's work preserved behind glass. The exhibition did more than honor the designer's legacy. It canonized him, freezing the most confrontational and beautiful moments of his career in time. Bolton described the show as an attempt to capture the remarkable craft amid outrage, framing McQueen not only as a provocateur, but as a master technician whose work belonged to history as much as to fashion's present. The effect was reverent, almost religious. Garments that once shocked on the runway now stood silent, illuminated, and untouchable. This kind of preservation brings obvious rewards. The brand's archive gained new cultural equity, its codes authenticated by the world's leading institutions. Museum vitrines turned McQueen's vision into a permanent part of the canon, ensuring that his influence would outlast the volatility of trends. But the cost of this security is subtle. When a brand's most vital moments are curated as history, the conversation around it begins to slow. The risk is that living creativity gives way to repetition, as designers and audiences look backward rather than forward. The museum path protects a legacy, but it can also turn it into a script. Each revival of a founder's codes, bumsters, tartan, and skulls, risks feeling like reenactment rather than evolution. McQueen's myth grows, but the brand itself faces the danger of becoming archival, admired, and referenced, but no longer urgent. If you like breakdowns of luxury brands beyond the hype, subscribe. The dilemma is clear. In safeguarding the genius, the House of McQueen must decide whether it wants to be a living force or a monument. The question grows sharper as the last direct links to the founder begin to disappear. Sarah Burton's departure in 2023 ended a 13-year chapter defined by continuity. For over a decade, the house had relied on her as a living link to its founder, a designer who translated McQueen's codes into something both recognizable and new. McQueen shows had been events, not just collections. With her exit, that bridge was gone. The last direct thread connecting the present to the founder's hand had been severed. Burton's tenure was long by fashion standards. She joined the house as an intern in 1996, rose to head of design, and then, in the aftermath of McQueen's death, accepted the role of creative director in May 2010. For 13 years, she steered the brand through uncertainty, shifting its energy from confrontation to refinement, from spectacle to stability. Her presence reassured both the atelier and the market. The collections continued, the business grew, and the specter of existential collapse faded into the background. But the logic of succession in fashion is never permanent. In September 2023, Burton announced her departure. The decision was public and definitive, and for many inside the industry, it was unexpected in its timing. The news landed with the weight of finality. The house was no longer buffered by someone who had worked alongside McQueen, no longer able to claim inherited authenticity. What remained was the brand itself, its archives, its codes, and its institutional memory. The question was no longer how to preserve a vision, but whether the house could generate one of its own. This moment forced a reckoning. Without a stabilizer at the helm, the brand faced a choice: to continue as a caretaker of legacy or to risk everything on a new identity. The stakes were no longer about honoring the past, but about inventing a future. The institution, once defined by its founder and then by its guardian, now stood alone. The next creative director would not inherit a living dialogue with McQueen. They would inherit only the archive and the expectation to make it matter again. In luxury fashion, such breaks are rare and irreversible. The House of Alexander McQueen, for the first time in its history, was defined not by continuity, but by the need to choose what it would become. Sean McGirr's appointment as creative director in October 2023 thrust Alexander McQueen into uncharted territory. McGirr, an Irish designer with a background at J.W. Anderson and a Central St. Martin's degree, arrived without a direct connection to the founder or to the long-serving Burton era. Kering's official statement described his mandate as building on McQueen's heritage with a powerful creative language, a phrase that left room for interpretation but carried the weight of expectation. The first test came on March 2, 2024, when McGirr unveiled his debut collection inside a stark Paris warehouse. The setting was raw, industrial, stripped of ornament, and it recalled the house's early years when shows felt more like underground experiments than luxury pageants. Models walked in tailored coats with exaggerated hips, low-slung trousers reminiscent of the original bumsters, and sculpted dresses that nodded to the founder's fascination with the body's extremes. The palette ran dark, black, oxblood, metallics. Materials included frayed wool, glossy vinyl, and distressed leather. Accessories such as heavy boots, skull-embossed bags, and metal hardware signaled a return to provocation. Critics quickly noted the shift. The collection's aggression stood in contrast to Burton's refined restraint. Vogue Runway described the show as channeling primal energy, while others debated whether the references to McQueen's 1990s codes felt like homage or imitation. McGurr said he wanted to make McQueen dangerous again, but he stopped short of promising a full revival. In these choices, the house revealed its new direction not through slogans, but through the cut of a jacket, the glint of hardware, and the charged atmosphere of a warehouse runway. For the first time in over a decade, the question was not how to preserve McQueen's legacy, but how to test its limits in the present. Luxury fashion houses rarely face a single road after the founder is gone. Instead, 3 distinct strategies emerge, each with its own rewards and dangers. The first is the curator path. Here, the brand becomes a steward of its own archive, protecting the founder's codes with near-religious care. This approach delivers heritage equity. Exhibitions like Savage Beauty at the Met and tightly controlled revivals of signature motifs grant the brand a place in history. Yet the risk is stagnation. When every collection is measured against the past, innovation slows and relevance fades. The conversation shifts from what is next to what is authentic. The second is the commercial path. This is the route of stability and scale, where the house translates its identity into mainstream legitimacy. Sarah Burton's era at McQueen, defined by the 2011 royal wedding dress and a focus on wearability, brought global recognition and commercial security. The payoff is clear. The brand survives, expands, and finds new audiences. But the danger is dilution. As the edge softens, the label risks losing the very soul that made it matter. The third is the reboot path. Here, the house pursues provocation, seeking to recapture the founder's energy through sharp references or bold reinvention. Sean McGurr's debut in 2024, with its aggressive tailoring and archival nods, signaled a desire to make McQueen dangerous again. The reward is renewed attention and a sense of risk. But imitation can slip into costume and revival into pastiche. Each path is a trade-off, not a verdict, an ongoing negotiation between legacy, relevance, and survival. Today, Alexander McQueen stands at a crossroads. Its legacy is both a foundation and a shadow. As new creative leadership tries to recapture relevance, the real test is whether a house built on provocation can still provoke in a world saturated by spectacle. In luxury fashion, relevance is not inherited. It must be confronted, risked, and proven season after season. The conversation is far from over. Share your take in the comments below.